9a, and then Tesam and Aleph. We had a contradiction between two brises. One brisa said that if you call the ninth one, if you made a mistake and you called the ninth one the 10th one. So we said the 10th one, we said the ninth one had a certain amount of sanctity and it would need to get a blemish before you could eat it. Just the fact that you called it the 10th one. It was a mistake. He said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. Oh. We said that you can't do that in the bank. This person did it for Meiser. And so the first brisa says that there's a certain amount of sanctity to it, the ninth one, which is because it was called the 10th. And it's considered, it's not brought as a sacrifice, but it needs to get a blemish before you can slaughter it in the house. And then the 10th one, even if it was just left there and wasn't pronounced anything, that would already be Meiser without any pronouncement. And that was a proof to what Rava wanted to tell us yesterday.
But he will find out his mistake?
He has to find out his mistake, or else he won't know what to do. He realizes that he made a mistake. I guess he checks after, he counts it. The other brisa said, no, the ninth one is nothing. You called it 10, it's nothing. Was it really only the ninth? So we have a contradiction. One says the ninth, you have to wait till it gets a blemish. The other one says, no, it was a mistake, it's nothing. So the Gemara answers, Hamani, Tani Tana Kamedi Rav Sheshes, Hamani Rav Shimon ben Yehudi. The Tana taught in front of Rav Sheshes. It says Tana, it's referring to someone that memorized the brises. He was called the Tana, even though he wasn't a Tana. Nowadays, every university has a library. It's important. The library is a big deal. In those days, every yeshiva had a Tana. It was like a library. It was like a walking library. One person, you had a yeshiva, you needed to have one person there that memorized all the brises. So this person memorized it. And there were things that were written down according to some opinions, but this was a resource. And the Tana says in front of Rav Sheshes that the one that says that the ninth one is nothing, that goes according to Rab Shimon ben Yehuda. He says, in the name of Rab Shimon, the Tanya Rab Shimon ben Yehuda, Imam Mishum Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon ben Yehuda says the name of Rab Shimon. It's always Rab Shimon by Yechai. Yeah. Rab Shimon ben Yehuda we don't have. Sheshes. Oh, Rab Sheshes is over here. He's a student. Rab Sheshes. He's under Rav Huna. He's a grand student of Rav. We just turned the page around the top now of Nun Testament Beis. It says, Afachi ein HaKadosh elam kein neka shem asiri himenu. He says that the ninth one could be sanctified, but that would only be if you didn't call anything else the 10th. But if you called something else the 10th, then the 10th one takes it. You can't have two 10s. If you called the 9th one the 10th, and the 10th one would go to the 11th, so the 9th one would have a certain sanctity. But if you call the 9th one the 10th, and then the 10th one you call the 10th, then the 9th one is nothing. Because you already have a 10th. You can't have two 10s. What is that? And he says it's logical also. Okay, in order to explain this, I have to jump ahead. If you have a Gemara like I have, then you just go over to the Mishnah right on the opposite page. Otherwise, if you have an art skill, you got to turn a few pages. Yeah. Now, if you look in this Mishnah, there's going to be two cases. We're supposed to do this Mishnah today, but You see there's 2 stars in the Mishnah? It's on Samach. Yeah. Well, you have it Kara L'chi. It's about 5 lines down in the wide lines.
In what page is that?
In the Mishnah, it says Kara L'chi. It's, you have it on 60A. Yeah, it would be on A2, probably. So the Mishnah says like this. We'll jump back and forth here just to have clarity. It says Karl L'chi Asiri. If you call the 9th one 10. Okay. Bala Asiri Chi. And you call the 10th one 9. Bala Achadasar Asiri. And then the 11th one you call the 10th. So the first time you got a number 10 in there was at the 11th one. Pronouncement of 10. So it says Shlashtem Mikudashim. All 3 are sanctified. However, there's different levels of sanctity. The 9th one isn't really sanctified. It just, you can't eat it unless it has a blemish. Ha'asiri, the 10th one, that's Meiser. That's really Meiser, even though you called it the 9th. That's Meiser. V'achadasa Karev Shlamim. But the 11th one is a sacrifice, and you have to bring it as a Shlamim. Va'isa Tmura. And if you exchange the 11th one with another one, it makes Tmura. It means the next one also is considered a sacrifice as an exchange. You're not supposed to exchange one sacrifice for another. But if you do, it's considered an exchange. And now Rabbi Yehuda, that's what Rameir says. Rabbi Yehuda says, V'chiesh Tmura is Tmura. You can't, Rabbi Yehuda assumes that the 10th one is Tmura itself. The 11th one is Tmura itself. Because it was supposed to be, it's the 10th one that's Maisa. And when you call the 11th one 10, what you just did was Tmura. And you can't exchange one for another and then exchange the next one for another one. That's too far removed. Rameir doesn't hold that. Okay, now jump down a little bit. Beginning of the line, it says Kar L'chi Asiri. Let's say you call the 9th one the 10th one. Exactly like before. Asiri Asiri. And you call the 10th one the 10th one. This is different. Before we said you call the 9th one the 10th one. Now and then the 10th one you call the 9th. Now you're calling the 9th one the 10th one, and the 10th one you're calling the 10th one. And then you call the 11th one the 10th one. So this person is really fixated on the number 10. He calls the 9th one 10, calls the 10th one 10, he calls the 11th one 10. Sweetie.
Sweetie.
Right?
Sweetie, that's right. Honey.
Ein achadasar mekudesh. The 11th one is not sanctified.
Well, he already identified
He already
correctly.
had it. He already has one. Okay.
Yeah.
So you follow here what's happening? Once there's one that's identified as the 10th, then the 11th one, you see, I have 9, 10, and 11. 9 is less of a sacrifice because I don't even offer it on the altar. I just wait till it gets a blemish. I'm talking about when you call the 9th the 10th. The 10th one becomes Meiser. Whether you call it the 10th or whether you call it the 9th, it becomes Meiser. But the 11th one, if I call when I call the 11th one 10, so there's a difference what I did to the 10th. If the 10th was called the 10th, then the 11th one is nothing. But if the 10th was called the 9th, then the 11th one is a shlamim. So now comes along Rav Shimon ben Yehuda here. And he says like this. He says that the 9th, we said the whole time that the 9th didn't matter. If you call the 9th the 10th, if you call the 9th the 10th, the 9th is going to need to have a mum before you eat it. Rav Shimon ben Yehuda says no, it's chulin. Okay, now Reb Shimon ben Yehuda is going to give us his logic here. Let's start again from the back to Nun Tes Amud Beis, the second line. It says Uma Achadasar. Whereas for the 11th one, Shuaisa Kedusha Li Karev, the 11th one could actually be brought as a sacrifice. But Eine Kadesh Elim Keineka Shemasiri Himeno. But it will only be sanctified if there was nothing else that's called 10. Gee, the ninth one. The ninth one is never offered as a sacrifice. It's just needs to get a blemish. In should it not be a kal v'chomer that if we uprooted the 10th one, it means there's no such thing, there's nothing else that's called 10, then fine. But if there is something else that's called 10, then the ninth should be nothing and should be chulin. So before, when we had a brisa that says that if he calls the ninth the 10th, we don't say what happens to the 10th, but what we're explaining here is that he calls the 10th, then the ninth becomes nothing. Shimon Yehuda explains that if the 11th one is nothing, when I call the 10th one the 10th, because I did that accurately, then I can't have another meiser. The ninth one for sure, because the ninth one doesn't even have a sanctity like the 11th one would have had. Comes along the Chachamim and they respond. Oh, right here we've resolved our contradiction. We've explained the opinion of Reb Shimon ben Yehuda, and we have an answer to the brisa. That it's the way we answer a brisa is we say this one holds like the Chachamim, this one holds like Reb Shimon ben Yehuda. That's the way we answer contradictions. We say either it's a different case, or we say it's different opinions. That's how. So, but back to we don't just stop right here. We go back to the discussion itself, and the Chachamim respond back. They say hi anesenes. No, it's exactly the opposite. The logic that you're giving is exactly the reason for us. Speaks about that in Chassidus, where you have one svara that could be used for both sides. One logic that could be used to say chayiv and patur. The example it gives is by when Hashem wanted to destroy the world, he said because ki yetzer leiv adam ra min urav, because man's inclination is evil from his youth, and so therefore God wants to destroy the world. And then when he says that he's not going to destroy the world again, the excuse that he gives for the people for their corruption was that because their inclination is bad for the youth. And therefore you shouldn't destroy the world. That's like an excuse for the corruption. So it's one logic that gets used for both. So here the Chachamim say, it's exactly that logic. Achad Aser, when it comes to the 11th, Shuhu Isa Kedusha Likarev, that becomes really sanctified. You can actually bring it as a sacrifice. If we have nothing else that's called 10, then good. But if you do have something else that's called 10, then lie. If you don't have if you do have something else that's called 10, because you didn't uproot the number 10 from this calculation, then it's not going to be brought. But it's never sanctified so much. So that sort of sanctification, that could apply even if we didn't uproot the number 10 from it. Even if we did not uproot the number 10. How do we write it there?
Yeah. Even though the name of the 10th animal is not removed from the 10th animal, nevertheless the ninth becomes 10th.
Right. We wanted to say differently. We wanted to say that if it is uprooted, that if you did call the 10th number 10, then the ninth becomes nothing. Not if you did not. The ninth one, doesn't have the same sanctity. the way that I'm understanding this is it's not with the words, but the that if I call the 10th one the 10th, so then the 9th one could still be can still have that lesser level of sanctity, because it was never brought as a sacrifice anyway. It's just a slight amount of sanctity that it needs to get among.
If you called the 10th one the 10th, then why is there a problem at all? I thought the problem
Because
was
I
when
called
you
the
didn't
9th one. I called the 9th one the 10th.
So you gave him a little bit of kedusha because you never called the 10th the 10th. So
No, but when I get to the 10th, I call the 10th one the 10th also. So we learned in the Mishnah.
It's never too late.
This is a shlomazel. This is a guy that didn't have enough coffee. Because, there's no incentive for an owner to game the system here.
Right. Just a
Because
regular
what
mistake.
happens?
People can't count straight.
What happens with a miser behema? You get the meat anyway. You lose the blood and you get the meat, right?
You gotta go to.
It's not like Bechoros.
Right.
You have to go to Yerushalayim.
You don't need to for Meiser. For Meiser Behema, you just Meiser Behema, you just shecht it at home. If it has a mum, it doesn't need pidyon, right?
But you gotta wait till it has a mum.
You have to wait till it has a mum.
And if it doesn't have a mum,
Then you can't shecht it.
you take it to Yerushalayim. It's a shlam.
If it doesn't have so the 11th one could be a shlamim.
I'm
The
talking
9th
about the
one,
regular 10.
a regular 10, it's brought to the Beis Hamikdash. If it doesn't have a mum, it's a carbon.
But it's just
So
the
that's
blood
his-
that's sprinkled, and then he gets
Right.
the meat
Right, but it's
That's
his
what I'm
loss.
saying.
The loss is that he has to
to take it there.
Yerushalayim.
Yes.
Going to Yerushalayim is a
One
loss.
means lots,
I
another means
understand,
gain.
but
Okay, inami, or
It's
else
a problem. Tirka.
another svara for the chachamim. Achadaser the ivra leyasiri. When it comes to the 11th one, the 10th one was already chosen. Yineka shemasir menuin. If we uprooted the 10th from the 11th because we already called it, then good. But Eloi. But she, the 9th one, dakatili ivra asiri. You didn't choose the 10th one yet when you said number 9 is 10. So then, afagav leineka shemasir menu, even if the 10th one wasn't uprooted from it, so it should still have its sanctity.
The 11th.
No, the 9th.
Oh, it says here it says the not have its sanctity.
When it comes to the 11th, yes. When it comes to the 11th, because the 10th one was already called 10, then the 11th one doesn't have its sanctity. When it comes to the 9th one, when I pronounced the 9th one 10, the 10th one wasn't pronounced 10 yet because I was only up to 9. So that's why you would have that slight amount of sanctity that the 9th one has. Then the Gemara concludes with this Sulei Midi. Sulei Midi is sort of like it's the opposite of Teku or Tiyufta. Sulei Midi means we've resolved everything and don't ask anything else.
What does it mean? We really didn't resolve it. Let's just get on.
There's nothing else. There's nothing else here to discuss. Sulei Midi is
Suleiman.
Su means more. Loi Midi is nothing else. Sulei Midi is nothing else more.
when your wife says, you're done.
What do they say? I rest my case. That's the Amar Rava. Rava says, Minyan Haroi Paiter, that if there was a counting of animals, and there were 10 animals in the pen, and you started counting, 1, 2, as they're going out through the hole. Whatever happens, those are already freed from Meiser. Whatever happens at the end, whether the 10th one dies or whatever, once they're counted properly, the counting itself exempts them. Where does Rava know this from? If we say, from this that was taught in the Mishnah, if one of the counted ones jumped, back into the pen, kulam peturim, everything is exempt. What's exempt? The ones that were counted are exempt, and the ones that are in the pen are exempt. The ones that are counted are exempt because they were counted already, and that's what we were looking for. We were looking for it to show us that the ones that are counted are exempt just because they were counted, even if I didn't reach the Meiser yet, even if I didn't reach the 10th one. Why are the ones that are back in the pen exempt? Because I don't know which one was the one that was counted already. So I can't count them again because it could be they were already exempt. Minuyin gufayo iftaru lav b'minyan haroi. The ones that were counted themselves, how are they exempt? Is it not because the counting is what that? You see, you have to realize. You would assume normally, let's say you're taking Meiser, you would assume that you have.
When you say count, means they went through
the
threshold.
Yeah. You take Meiser, so you have all of this grain, or let's say you're even dealing with money. Let's say even though it's a minhag, but what frees up everything from the obligation is when you remove the 10th one. When it comes to Meiser Behema, we're saying it's not, what frees everything up is not the removal of the 10th one. What frees everything up is the fact that you counted it out. So if you were taking Meiser off dollars and you were going 1, 2, 3, 4, and you would assume that the 10th one you'd say, okay, this is for tzedakah, let's say.
Yeah.
But what we're saying here is that no, it would 1, 2, 3, 4, and for whatever reason you lose the rest of them. Those are already exempt just because you counted them. Now that's not the way it works by Meiser. But by Meiser Behema, that's what Rav is saying. That's how it works. It's the counting that exempts it. So, in the proof of it is because if I have one of those animals that's just counted jumps back in, so it exempts everything. How is it exempt? I didn't get to the Meiser yet. The answer is because the counting exempted it. So the Gemara says, but one second. If you look at that carefully, there's no proof there. Because it says, Kafatz echad min aminuyim, one of the counted ones jumped in. How many were counted? So the way I described the case was you got to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's say, or 6 even, and one of them jumps back. But that's not what that Mishnah says. That Mishnah could be talking about B'dilma, the Aser Ilavayu. Maybe one of the counted ones jumps back is not talking about that it jumped back when I got up to number 4 or number 6 or number 7. It jumped back after I reached 10. It doesn't say in the Mishnah that I didn't get to 10. That was an assumption, but that's not so proven. It could be that you actually reach 10. And what happens here is that if one of them jumps back in, not the Meiser one, just one of the ones that are chulin now, because the 1 through 9 jumps back in, everything is exempt. It means everything in the pen is exempt, because I don't know which one was one of the counted ones. So what makes it exempt from Meiser is not the counting, but the fact that Meiser was taken. We lose Rava's proof. The Gemara says, no, you can't mess up the proof like that. Why? Because Hatani Minam Musarin L'Seicha. I have another part to that Brisa, or that Mishnah. It says that if one of the Meiser ones jumped back, then I have to wait till they all get a mum. Now, ignore that part. Ignore that. The Gemara is ignoring that right here. That you have to wait till they all get a mum. The Gemara is now looking at Mina Musarim L'Seichan, means that the one that Meiser was taken from jumped back in. That means that I need to have 2 cases. One case needs to be where I counted 1 up until possibly 9, and then 1 jumped back. In the other case is where I counted till 10 and 1 jumped back. Kafatzechen min aminuyim, one of the counted ones, but I didn't reach Meiser. And the second case is min musarin, where I did reach the 10th one. And once I have the first case, where one of the counted ones jumps back, then that's proof to Rava that it's the counting that exempts it, not the removal of the 10th one that exempts it.
Wait, if you said you didn't reach 10, then there's nothing in the pen. If you told me you counted 61, so I know there's 6 in the pen that you've counted, each for Meiser, and the other 54, whatever. Then if one from the new number 61 jumps into the 6, now I understand the question. But if your case was you just reached 10, so what was in the pen? That
okay.
He was...
You have a bunch of animals in the pen. You're letting them go through into the outer area. So while you're counting 1 to 9, we're assuming here that one of them jumps back into the pen. You didn't reach number 10 yet. You didn't count 10 out. Okay, you counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. One of them jumps back. So we're assuming that that's the case of Kafetz Echad Min HaMinuyim. And what we said is that everything is exempt.
So you could have 100 in the pen.
So there could be 100
And
back
one
in the
jumps
pen,
back, and
and
now
they're all
all of
exempt
them.
now because I don't know which one was the one that was counted.
So when you count the Masha and you're painting him, number 10, he's just free with the whole bunch that have just gone out. Oh,
Yeah.
that was my confusion.
That's why you had to
Thinking
paint
they're
it.
going in the pen. That would
No, that's why you have to paint it, because now it's going to be with all the
so the
other
pen
9.
always contains the uncounted.
Right. So, at least in the words that I'm using here, in my... But the Gemara says now that when you said me'usarin, some of them, we have 2 cases now. We have some of them that Meiser was not taken from because it was just started counting. It's called Minuyin, counted. And there's some of them me'usarin that Meiser was taken from. The Gemara says, 1 second. Dilma, my me'usarin, Meiser dafka. Me'usarin doesn't mean that it's Meiser was taken. Me'usarin means that it is the Meiser one. Now how many cases, now I have like this. You see, what was proving to me that Kafetz Echad Min HaMinuyim was that I didn't reach number 10, and nevertheless it was exempt, because I had another case that says Me'usarin. Me'usarin means Meiser was taken. The Gemara is saying, no. Went off?
Why is this red?
No, the red is
That's good.
The red is
The other case is, Me'usarin is, not that Meiser was taken from it. Me'usarin means it is the Meiser itself. So now, it's very possible that Kafetz Echad Min HaMinuyim means one of the counted ones jumped. That means I counted 1 through 10. And one of the Chulin ones jumped back. And then the Meiser, Me'usarin, the second case is not that one of the 1 through 9 jumped back, but the 10th one jumped back, and somehow the paint washed off, and I didn't know. So that's the case. The Gemara says Dekanami, because look at the halacha. I'll prove it to you. It's precise also in the wording, because it says the Tani Yiru. It says, what do you do if the Me'usarin jumps back? It says you have to wait till they all get a mum. That means that it was actually the sacrifice that jumped back. So what we're trying to work out here is we have an ambiguous brisa that says one of the counted ones jumped, and the ambiguity is, does it mean that that those counted ones never reached the number 10, or does it mean that it did reach the number 10? And the difference would be, can I prove Rava's halacha of minyan haroi is paiter? Just counting itself, even not getting to 10, already exempt. So we have to try again. Elam Rava, rather Rava says Amakra Yavar. It passes through. Kvar Rava, but it didn't pass through once before. Maisha Kvar Rava. What does it mean that it passed through once before? Ida Aser Lavayo, if I already took Meiser on it. Tzrichel Meimar. Do you have to say that that's exempt? Ella laved iftir lo b'minyan haroi. Rather, what it means is, Meiser was never taken from this. So, but how did it pass through? Because it passed through, but somehow I didn't end up getting to number 10. And it was pater because it passed through. So just the passing through, just the counting itself exempts it. Shema mina, this we see. When you count for a minyan, so it's not when you get to the number 10. It's the minyan haroi, just the counting itself. So the way you're counting the people. So you think like, oh, when you get to the number 10, then everything happens. No. It's the counting itself that every person is significant. It doesn't have to be the.
Hear that, kids?
If he goes out, he starts to count again.
First,
See, he goes, does number 8, he gets number 8, number 5 leaves because he's doing something. Comes back, you start counting all over again. I mean,
For the minyan? They were counted already. It's too late.
Yes,
It's already counted.
Ah.
Okay. If you do 1 times 2 times 3 times 4, the factorial, if you do that, you say the first number that's going to be over 600,000 is going to be 10. It's going to be approximately 3 million. But the 9 is still below 600,000. So the all the Jews combined together, you have all 600,000 when you do it like that.
The stream.
3 million is including.
3 million includes the women and
females,
children. Isn't
right,
that
and
interesting?
People under 20
Isn't that interesting? I don't know the formula for factorial.
Oh, no.
You do there's what you know. There's a
So
formula you
women
do.
and children?
I forget the formula. Or else you have to do 1 times 2 times 3. But there's a formula. I forget.
You take the first and the last, and you keep matching until you get to the middle. What is like 1 plus 2 plus 3? Take the first and the last, like 9 plus 1, and 2 plus 8.
Uh-huh.
So,
What do you get there? What do you get when you do that?
Is
it's
it
an
true?
easier way than having that.
Okay. Tanya Kavasei de Rava. There's a proof to Rava. What do we say?